So we know that from the documentary that you and the other trainers, you sort of start to notice a few things going wrong or that are not quite right with the orcas. When you sort of aired your concerns to SeaWorld, how did they react, or did they react at all, or did they just ignore it? Or
Yeah, John Jett and I were two of the first guys to come out. We actually started talking about this. I was on Anderson Cooper's program the night that Dawn was killed. Most of the Voice of the Orcas trainers, myself and John Jett, Carol Ray, Samantha Berg, we've all gone back to professional school. JJ is a professor, a PhD at Stetson University. I'm a medical doctor. Samantha and Carol both have their master's degrees and are business owners in speech pathology and acupuncture. And so we've all kind of got our own thing going. So when we came out and spoke out against SeaWorld, it really wasn't like we were jeopardizing our current positions. One of the reasons why current trainers don't speak out is because they face the real possibility of not being able to get a job or being blackballed by the industry, because SeaWorld is a very wealthy company, a corporation, and can make life miserable for trainers that speak out. I mean, John Hargrove recently quit SeaWorld, but they're really trying to make him pay for speaking out in his new book, Beneath the Surface. So really, SeaWorld is a big bully, and that's the way they operate. Now, here's what happened with us. We came out, and the snowball started rolling. And if you go to our blog, there's a thing called the Blackfish GIS tour. And what it is a timeline for people to see all the key events that occurred from day one up until right now. And it's got a lot of the major players. It's not a comprehensive list, but it's pretty detailed. And what happens is you go and see what dates things happened, what city they happened in, and then there's usually videos or articles attached to this GIS tour. GIS is Geographic Information Systems. It's like an interactive Google map, basically, and it's really cool, and it shows how things unfolded. SeaWorld didn't react to us speaking out because I think they thought they could control the message, just like they did trying to blame Dawn for her ponytail. They tried they basically just thought they could win using old school PR by feeding the media whatever they wanted to say. Unfortunately for them, they had myself and John and Carol and Sam kind of as the truth squad for a while, but they thought that we would go away. And then Tim Zimmerman wrote a piece in Outside Magazine in June of 2010. The story grew a little bit larger. Then David Kirby wrote this book here, Death at SeaWorld, in 2012. The story grew a little larger. Then Blackfish began to be made and was released at Sundance in 2013. And then, of course, in the end of 2013, it came out on CNN. And I think 23 million people saw it in one night. And that kind of blew the doors open, so to speak. So SeaWorld underestimated Blackfish. And so their strategy was, it'll just go away on its own, and that was the wrong strategy. I suppose they could have tried to tie us up in court initially, but they didn't, and now the cat's out of the bag, and pretty much everyone knows what's going on.
it's hard to cover up when there's so much out there, isn't it? Like they've got no chance, really.
Yeah.
So what was the final straw for you that made you leave SeaWorld?
Well, I started to speak out against management and fell out of favor with management. I ended up having to go back to school. I had attended Florida State as a young man, and the things that really affected me were the broken teeth, the collapsed dorsal fins, the shortened lifespans, and these are the things that led me to speak out. And I had to move on with my life by going back to school, which was a long process. I was in school for many years and became a chiropractor first in 2000, and then went back to medical school and finished that in 2008. And so I'm a medical doctor now, practicing in the state of Washington. But it was basically the poor health of the animals, the diminished longevity, all the things that I saw at SeaWorld.
Well, so very recently, all the stocks and shares have gone down in SeaWorld as well. I've seen in sort of some news articles. and a amount of people going through the door has declined. But what do you think it will take for SeaWorld to take action, putting these orcas in a much better type of enclosure, like you say, a natural cove? What do you think it will take for them to actually do something and listen to everyone?
What I think SeaWorld should do is stop breeding captive animals. I think they should cease their plans to expand and export animals to overseas destinations such as Dubai or China or Russia, if that's what they have in mind. I think that they should take an active role in trying to restore salmon runs in the Pacific Northwest, which is what's preventing the southern resident orcas from making a comeback. Now, I've written about this at Whale and Dolphin Conservation, which is an NGO. I think it's based in the UK, but it's also international. It's called SeaWorld's Lasting Impact. If you just Google that, you'll get to read about how SeaWorld pretty much is the primary reason why these animals are endangered, and now what's preventing them from recovering is a lack of food. So SeaWorld took out or killed approximately 58 animals. That's probably a low number out of a group that was just probably 120 before the collection started in 1965. And, we're down to 70-something after they were done. Mm. And the sad part about that is that they removed mostly younger animals. And a lot of the younger breeding animals that would be having babies right now were pulled out of that clan from about 1965 through about 1976, I think, is when they moved on to Iceland. So for about 11 years, Don Goldsberry and Ted Griffin, primarily with the help of others, collected a lot of animals, and you can read about it at that article that I mentioned called SeaWorld's Lasting Impact. So what I think SeaWorld could do to kind of make amends is take all of their money and say, hey, look, we're going to save this clan. We're going to address conservation issues in the rivers and streams and Puget Sound area of Washington State. We're going to clean this place up. We're going to put good environmental policies in place to protect salmon and help the animals recover on their own. So that's what I think they should do. I have no faith that they'll do that. In fact, they're planning to build the world's largest fish farm a few miles off the coast of San Diego, and you know that fish farms are notorious for contaminating local populations of fish. So we'll see what happens with that. But SeaWorld tends to be a company that makes poor decisions, at least recently, and I hope they don't do that.
That fish farm sounds like a really bad idea.
Yeah.
I've been looking at the PETA campaigns, and I'm just wondering if you think they're effective, or what you think they could do recently. I've seen this one of this lovely, gorgeous pregnant model.
Yeah.
And that's the SeaWorld one, and it says separating babies and mothers since 1970.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering what you think of sort of PETA's campaigns for, boycotting SeaWorld and things like that.
I think a lot of people have a problem with the shock and awe factor that PETA uses, but I think that's an effective visual campaign showing a naked pregnant model in a bathtub, which is symbolic of the mothers at SeaWorld. If you kind of scale down the amount of space that these killer whales have, it's not much bigger than a bathtub. It's probably a little bit bigger, but not much. So I think an effective visual. Some people disagree with those tactics. PETA has a large following, including a lot of celebrities that don't believe killer whales or any animals should be in captivity. I know PETA is a very strong supporter of veganism globally, and I have no problem with that ad. I think it's pretty effective.
I think it is. I think these things, they need to get a tactic so they get people noticing them, and I think that's obviously what they're doing, whether people are talking where they don't fully accept it, or it's always getting talked about, isn't it?
Yeah.
So for people interested in campaigning for orcas and whales and animals at zoos, what can you suggest to people to sort of start with and how to get involved?
Well, if you go to our website, and when I say our website, I'm referring to myself, John Jett, Carol Ray, Samantha Berg, called Voice of the Orcas. There's a page called So you've seen Blackfish, what's next? And I've written out 10 things that people can do. I probably can't rattle all 10 of them off right now because I haven't looked at it in a few weeks. But basically, don't buy a ticket. Don't go to places like SeaWorld. Educate your friends and your family. For example, in the U.S., Blackfish is playing again this Saturday. Have a Blackfish party. Watch the Cove. Don't buy farm-raised salmon. The industrial farming operations here in the Pacific Northwest are killing and spreading disease to local salmon populations, and that's contributing to the decline or the lack of recovery of the southern resident killer whales. Read Death at SeaWorld. Basically, become educated, help spread the word, and then take action yourself. Eating less meat is a good idea. It's not only good for the animals, it's good for the planet. I know everyone's not prepared to be vegan or even vegetarian, but just limiting your meat intake is going to do wonders for CO2 emissions and methane emissions, and just taking care of deforestation, and all these things are kind of basically putting the planet in a crisis state right now. I mean, we're at potentially several tipping points that if we cross, the planet's going to look a lot different in just 10 or 20 years. It already is. We've lost, I think, half the world's land animals since like 1970, something like that, some astounding number. We've lost 40 to 50% of the ocean's phytoplankton. The ocean acidification that's going on is destroying coral reefs globally. And we start knocking out the very base of the food chain, eventually that comes to us. So we're at a point now where saving the whales literally kind of implies saving us too. And I hope people can take action like less meat intake, don't go to these parks, educate yourself, spread the word. Now, I've stated before, our political system has a lot to be desired, but I do think that the voting is important. At least it's doing something. I mean, here in the United States, Barack Obama was elected to 2 terms, and a lot of people have problems with the president here, just like the prime minister in the UK. But I mean, the alternative to Barack Obama was Mitt Romney. So, I do think that votes matter. I mean, think about how different the planet would look had Al Gore been elected instead of George Bush 2 times. You got a guy that's promoting solar, that was much more environmental friendly than George Bush was, and 8 years of the Bush legacy reshaped the world, and now we're faced with some destabilized Middle East. Corporate tentacles are now global, and we're harvesting the entire planet. We're in bad shape, and I'm hoping that enough people will rise up and make change. So that's where we are, in my opinion.